Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to review the latest gaming book that I have read, Fantasy Craft. Now, this is a hefty tome. It is not small by any means. Now, this book is based on the 3.5 OGL in the tradition of Everstone, Pathfinder, and Trailblazer. But this particular game takes the OGL into areas far beyond anything else I have read. Um, Seriously, this is as far as you can get and still be able to say it is based on the OGL. Any further, and you're working on an entirely separate game, which is fine. But they wanted to stay within the OGL concept because it is an extremely popular set of rules. It's open open to anyone to work with, and it gives you an entire database, a huge database of available material. All good reasons to want to use the OGL. So, how does this differ from the OGL itself? Well, this book, to my mind, is the OGL seen through the eyes of a physicist. Because everything in this book, everything, has been broken down into distinct quanta. Everything is very precisely defined and labeled. Also, it has a fairly steep learning curve. This is not a game for a starter campaign. This is not a game for someone that is just entering the hobby. This is a game really that should be only approached by someone who's had some gaming experience under their belt. They throw a lot of new terms at you. And when they introduce those terms, there is no explanation of what those terms are. There are page references to later in the book where those terms are explained, which is nice, but I am not the kind of person that wants to be flipping back and forth. But I've been reading gaming books since 1978, so I could infer from the context of what they're talking about pretty much what they were discussing. And so I kind of went with that. And I was able to get very close to what they meant to say on my own until eventually I would get to the reference later in the book. This is a deep book. Not only is it large, but it's got a lot of stuff to handle. It's got a lot of different terms than the standard OGL. If this is the kind of thing puts you off, this may not be the product for you. But if you're up to the task, and you don't mind seeing the OGL presenting in a new light with new terminology here and there, I think it's worth it. Now, I'm going to use the table of contents here to try to get some notes, gaming notes here, and this may be a multi-parter because this is a big, bloody book. Okay, we start with character creation, of course, and attributes are fairly standard, nothing earth-shattering. Next, we deal with the species. Now, the species, of course, they're not going to list the species for me on the table of contents. That would just be too easy now, wouldn't it? Alrighty, here we go. The species. We have Drake. You can actually play a minor dragon. It's a large creature, so you're seeing something about the size of a horse. But still, it's interesting. You can play a first-level character that has the ability to fly. I think that's cool, and it right off the bat tells me that this game does not bow too deeply at the altar of balance. Now, the game itself is balanced within itself, and I think in some ways it's more balanced than the OGL is in the fact that the fighter types have far more things to do, and the magic users, their power has been toned down a little. So the curves are a little more shallow, things are a little more even. But you still get to do really neat things in both cases, so that's a good thing. Next we have dwarf, elf, giant, goblins, humans, ogres, orcs, pecks, halflings. Rootwalker lets you play ents. That's a really cool thing. Saurons, you lizard people, different varieties. And the unborn, which are constructs of some variety. Mechanical, clay, flesh, you name it. If it's not living and has never been living, it falls into the category of unborn. Not undead, but unborn. Now, one of the things I like about this is the number of these races are base. The Drake, the Dwarf, the Elf, the Giant. So if you just want to play straight up that class, that race, that's what they are. You would, for a Dwarf, for example, you would just be considered a Mountain Dwarf. But if you want to take racial feats that affect your race, you can become a Fire Dwarf, kind of like a Lava Dwarf. You can become a Hill Dwarf, a dwarf that lives outside the mountains. And each of these has different stat and skill bonuses and things like that. So you can customize your character. Same with the Giants and the Drakes and what have you. The Drake would just be a standard true Drake with a fire breath weapon. But if you wanted to go into a direction of cold or lightning or something like that, you could, and that pushes you in the direction of one of those racial subtypes. But you don't have to if you don't want to. So I kind of like the feature that offers you. Now, one thing right off the bat, humans get something called a talent. Instead of getting a free feat, they get something called a talent. And there are like 24 of these things. And these things make the humans the single most versatile race in the game, bar none. You want to play a versatile character, you're gonna want to play a human with one of these talents. For example, you pick Agile. You get an attribute bonus of +2 Dex. Your base speed is 30. You get double boost. You may spend roll 2 action dice to boost your dexterity-based skill checks. Naturally elegant. Your appearance bonus increases by +1. Parry. You gain the parry trick, which is a combat feature. Now, you hear me say action dice. Every single class gets action dice in this game. You can't not use them in this rule set. You have to use them. They are built into the very DNA of these rules. And they're actual dice, they're not points. So I think first level characters get like 3 die 4. And you get them every session. So every time your players sit down at the table to play, you get 3 of these things at first level. And you add them to rolls, and you can use them to activate a powers. For example, you may get a critical, but you cannot confirm a critical unless you spend an action die. That's how the game is structured. Okay? Sometimes you just don't have the points because, the fates have said you're out of luck, so you can't do something. But it's a nice feature, and as you get higher levels, you get more action dice, and the action dice get larger. Die 6, die 8. You get the point. Then we have the classes. Assassin, Burglar, Captain, Courtier, Explorer, Keeper, Lancer, Mage, Priest, Sage, Scout, Soldier, and some Experts, which kind of prestige classes. They kick in at 5th level if you want to play them. Alchemist, Beastmaster, Edgemaster, Paladin, Rune Knight, and Swashbuckler. The company's also marketing a line of master classes. None of them are in this. And I'm hoping they put them out into a single volume, because at the moment they're selling them one at a time as PDFs, which is a model I don't like. But they're supposed to be kicking it at 10th level and let you take your character focus even more narrow for more powers, but less versatility. Then we have skills, and the skill comes as packages. So you have like acrobats, again, kind of like Pathfinder. It's a base kind of general skill, and then there's sub skills within acrobatic, like tumbling and climbing and things like that. They're all pretty across the board. You've seen these skills before, nothing. And there's a feat section which breaks down to combat feats, melee combat feats, ranged combat feats, unarmed combat feats, chance feats, covert feats, gear feats, skill feats, species feats, I mentioned those already, spellcasting feats, style feats, and terrain feats. And we're going to be doing a multi-parter.